Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call this continuation of our board meeting from the 22nd of June to order. And note that we do have a quorum of trustees present. As I recall, when we left off yesterday, we were at report 20-042 with regard to the new Statesville Secondary School. Board services has provided the revised agenda with all of the attachments, and you will note that the item we were unable to discuss last night, report 20-059, summary of results from student survey, valuing voices, identity matters, has been included under matters for discussion so that we will in fact have an opportunity to ask questions about that report before we move to the other items that we already had on our agenda for discussion. Are there any questions? If there are none, then I would like to turn the chair over to Trustee Penny, to Vice Chair Penny.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And yes, indeed, we're going to start on agenda item 10.9, report 20-042, new Statesville Secondary School. And as I recall, last night we ended off with Manager Ostfachuk delivering her report. But in light of the continuation, I'm wondering if Manager Ostfachuk could provide just a very, very quick overview of the report once again for our benefit. And thank you very much. And thank you for tolerating our request again, Manager Ostfachuk. So please continue.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll try and be very brief. The report before you recommends a program opening grade structure and boundary for the new Statesville Secondary School. We did, beginning in the fall of last year, set a working group that was comprised of a number of representatives from each school involved in the study, administrators, trustees Boothby and Scott, Superintendent Lehman, and as I mentioned last night, Janet McDonald and Lisa Gowans were the lead planners on the matter. So a large working group. Also members of the community involved in that working group. We had just gotten to the point of reaching a consensus about a plan to go out for consultation to a public meeting when the pandemic impacts really hit. And so in April of this year, we came forward to board looking to amend the consultation plan to allow us to do the consultation electronically. And that was undertaken, and really we were pleased again with the support of communications and allowing us to go forward with a thought exchange portion of the consultation, and we got quite good feedback on what was proposed. So what I did last night is outline to you the boundary that we are hoping to establish. The grade structure, we are suggesting that it open as a 7 to 9 school and then progress 1 grade each year as it grows. And the programs offered will be English, EFI, and MFI for the intermediate students, and English, Core French, and immersion for the high school students, 9 to 12, so a full contingent. I think maybe I'll leave it there. That's pretty much an overview summary of where we've gotten to. I did highlight last night some of the issues that came up that we grappled with. Nothing is ever perfect, but I'm open to any questions. I hope I can answer them for you.
Thank you very much, Manager Ostfachuk. And I might note, trustees, that the recommendations for this are A through E and are contained in page 14 of report 20-042. If you haven't found that yet, for your benefit. And right now I'm going to, this being board, we need a mover and a secondary for this motion. And I see Trustee Scott and Trustee Booth, we have their hand up. So I'll go to Trustee Scott first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I move the recommendation, I'd like to say thank you very much to all of our planning staff who worked on this. It was much appreciated that it was possible to continue with the public consultation. There was a pretty fair consensus within the working group, but certainly there are issues that came up in the course of those discussions and subsequently in the consultation from members of the community that raised concerns. Certainly we have to be concerned about several things. I do have one question with regard to the report, and that relates to the tiny numbers of students in some cohorts at Aylorn Cassidy who come from the area that would be directed to Goulburn Middle School under this proposal for grades 7 and 8, and subsequently then to South Carleton High School. Certainly I've heard concerns about students leaving their friends if there were only one or two in a class who would not be proceeding to the new high school in Statesville. And I wondered if there will be opportunity down the road to look at those individually, or to perhaps bring forward some kind of a proposal once we have a better handle of the numbers to see if we can solve the problems for some of those kids.
Mr. Chair, I'll just jump in and go ahead and attempt to respond to Trustee Scott. This goes back to the issue that I raised last night in more detail, where we said we always try and create families of schools where you have a logical boundary for students beginning in kindergarten, knowing where they're going to intermediate school and going to high school, all as one cohort. In this particular case, because we have to go back to the southern area of this study, that area south essentially of Fallowfield Road, because there's no EFI offering there right now and no good way to get it, we don't have the school space to offer it in any one place. And it was also going to be constrained by the moratorium right now in place by the province for those larger scale studies. So we do have kids from south of Fallowfield who do travel into the Statesville area to get EFI instruction, and they go to both Aylorn Cassidy and Westwind. There was a concern about this area in the fullness of time. If you look at the full K-8 contingent of children at Aylorn, I think there are about 63 kids in total. If you look at Westwind, there are a few more, 87 students, and that may well grow over time with growth in those boundaries. So when you're looking at 150 students and whether or not they should go to the new Statesville High School or remain at South Carleton, there are huge implications for both a high school that will be very full very quickly in Statesville and in South Carleton wanting to maintain its numbers. I think though what Trustee Scott is speaking to is a situation right now with the initial opening of the school where in particular at Aylorn Cassidy, there are classes where only 7 or so on average of the children will be going to will be directed to Goulburn and subsequently to South Carleton, while the rest of their class goes on to Statesville High School for 7 to 12. I do know of one situation where there is, for example, in that very small cohort, just one girl who would be separated from everyone else and going to South. We have left the recommendation as is and haven't dealt with that because we did want to see the opportunity to know what kind of impact this would have and for how long. It is our intention to get back to that south area as quickly as we can to address this inequity of not having EFI in the south, and that will solve this. But for that small interim period, we are going to have those small cohorts that are redirected to South Carleton away from the kids with whom they've gone to school for some time. So we are open to seeing what the impact of that is and understanding that. But the discussion at the working group and subsequently, we thought that it could be dealt with by means of applications for transfers, for student transfer, if there were compelling personal reasons to do so. The one thing that does not leave on the table is transportation. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much for that. I think I will certainly wait and see how the numbers look as we get closer to the opening of this school, and see what then can be done to address any unique situations for any of these students. And with that done, Mr. Chair, I would like to move the recommendation on page 14 of the report, all 5 parts of it. Would you like me to read them, or can we hope that everybody has them, has already read them, and or put them on the screen?
I think with the board's indulgence, we can just make sure that they're on the screen. And I see Manager Guthrie has put them on the screen, is going to put them on the screen for us. But thank you for moving the motion, Trustee Scott. I'm just wondering if we have a person that wants to second your motion. And I see that Trustee Boothby's was hand up. Trustee Boothby's hand was up. Do you wish to second, Trustee Boothby?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you very much. And did you want to have an introduction, Trustee Scott, to your motion?
I think that I don't need any further introduction. It was a very good presentation of the report last night.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we do have Trustee Boothby's hand up. So Trustee Boothby, please go ahead.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I just wanted to thank staff, because this and the other Fernbank school consultation, they were very detailed, a lot of participation from a lot of schools, and it was basically the same group of people from planning staff who were doing both of them. So they've done a really good job of meshing both of those consultations, and I think that we've come up with the best possible solutions for a very complex area. So thank you to staff, and I definitely will be supporting this.
All right, thank you very much. Any further debate? I don't see anyone's hand up, but if you wish to say something, now is the time to put your hand up. And seeing no hands up, we're going to return back to Trustee Scott for wrap up of the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The big issue, I think, here for many people is that this is a school that's going to be overcrowded almost as soon as it's opened. And that goes to the challenge we have always in dealing with a Ministry of Education capital funding process that doesn't always allow us to build schools in a timely way to serve communities that are either new communities entirely or rapidly growing communities. That's just part of being a school board, and has been the case for many years now. But I think that the community really values this. It was very important for the whole of Statesville itself to be able to be directed to this school. And I hope that my colleagues will support the staff recommendations in their entirety.
Thank you very much, Trustee Scott. And at this point, because this is board, we're going to turn it over to Manager Guthrie to for a recorded vote on this. So Manager Guthrie, could you call the roll?
Trustee Scott.
In favor?
Trustee Boothby. In favor. Trustee Blackburn. Trustee Huff.
In favor.
Trustee Campbell.
In favor.
Trustee Ellis.
In favor.
Trustee Jennings.
In favor.
Trustee Lyra.
In favor.
Trustee Bell.
In favor.
Trustee Fisher.
In favor.
Trustee Schwartz.
In favor?
I'll call on trustee Blackburn.
Oh, hi.
And trustee Penny. Trustee
Nicole, did you hear
Blackburn?
me? Yeah, I'm in favor. I'm having technical problems here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Penny.
In favor. And that, I believe that concludes our roll call, and the motion passes unanimously for all the trustees present. And thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Scott for the continuation of the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Penny. The next item on our agenda is the recommendation with regard to the purchase of replacement Chromebooks, report 20-055, and I'd like to invite the director to introduce this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, trustees have before them a report around the purchase of additional Chromebooks. As you're aware, we had significant expenditure over this past period of time when we had closure and moved to virtual learning, and the NLT team, along with our finance team, has done an analysis of what our future needs will look like. And Superintendent Sean Leanman is here to bring that report forward with a recommendation attached. So I'll turn it at this point to Superintendent Leanman.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The report 2055 that you have in front of you is a recommendation to purchase 5,000 additional Chromebooks in order to augment the current fleet that we have. We have about 23,000, just over 23,000 Chromebooks currently in our system. We were able to distribute approximately 11,000 of those Chromebooks to families. And so students and families will continue and we'll keep those Chromebooks over the summer months, as has the information that was shared with us on Friday from the Ministry of Education, that there are 3 potential models to return to school with in September. We are fairly certain that part of that will be the use of technology or the continued use of technology. So our plan at this point is for those 11,000 Chromebooks to remain in the hands of those students and families in order to continue with their learning, whatever that model looks like, and that we are seeking 5,000 additional Chromebooks in order to augment what we currently have in the system. You will note in the report that some of our schools are completely out of devices and completely out of Chromebooks. They had to borrow from other schools, or we had to borrow from the system in order to be able to support their school communities. The additional 5,000 Chromebooks that come to us will afford us with the opportunity of replenishing those schools to a level of 4 devices, or sorry, one device per 4 students. That was the model that we had set out with our 5-year classroom technology acquisition plan, and is something that we are committed to continuing to do. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the recommendation. The final thing that I would note is that the recommendation is coming to you because it is in excess of what staff can approve, and that we currently do have the funds in the Business and Learning Technologies budget in order to cover the expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. The floor is now open for discussion. Trustee Boothby, would you like to begin?
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I just have one question. So the Chromebooks that we provided for the students during the shutdown, were we able to provide each student in a family that demonstrated a need a Chromebook, or were we having to limit that to 1 per family or some other ratio?
Through you, Chair, we were able to provide the number of Chromebooks per family that were needed. I think it started out initially, and it varied sort of school by school around, their initial responses when they surveyed parents. And I think as more people were working at home and as the landscape changed a little bit regarding the learn at home and use of technology, we did certainly have more devices going to families. So, initially we were about 50% of the 11,000 that went out. I think we were, closer to 5,000 or 6,000. And those increased as, the continued needs arose in individual schools. And so, yes, that we were able to provide what was ever required in the family, whether it would be one or two or whatever was needed. There wasn't a necessarily certain criteria related to it. It was really based on the individual need of the family and of the school, how they were allocated.
Trustee Boothby?
Sorry, keep forgetting to unmute. Thanks for that. So do we have a plan of how we're going to be able to evaluate the fitness, the operability, fitness of the equipment before school begins, or are we still working on that? And that's my last question.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Boothby, and through you, Chair. Currently, we've had about 100 Chromebooks that have come back to us from families that have been damaged. Some of those have been repairable, some of them haven't. So we haven't reached out to specific families asking at this point in time if their Chromebook is working or not. There will be communication that will go out before the end of this week to share with families and schools that they will be able to retain the Chromebooks, and for students that have Wi-Fi device, or sorry, mobile hotspots, those will remain in the hands of students and families as well over the summer. And we will work on a plan to determine what that will look like in the fall for the operability of those devices.
Okay, thank you.
And next we go to Trustee Bell.
Thank you for the update, Mr. Lehman, and also great to hear that the students will have access to the hotspots and the iPads. Quick question as I get up to speed. Can school councils buy Chromebooks for the students is one question. And then the second follow-up question, when we map out those schools that are 4-to-1 ratio, are those schools connected to the RAISE index as well? Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks for the question, Trustee Bell. The first item was around school councils purchasing technology, et cetera. We are I'd say, discouraging that from happening. What we're trying to do is we have been able to put in place a plan that's 4-to-1, and so anything beyond that. At one point in time, there were a number of smart boards that were coming into the district. Again, that's sort of passé at this point in time, and they're not. But if a school council would like to certainly augment what we provide, which would be a working projector in every classroom in order to support the demonstration of learning, as well as the 4-to-1 to devices. Certainly they're open and they can do that, but we would ask that they would work, Trustee Bell, with their school principal around doing that. So one of our big things here with our classroom technology acquisition plan is to foster equity of access, right, and opportunity throughout the system. And that sort of comes into the second question based around our RAISE schools and based around the number of devices. So right now, the way that we have set up the ratio is 4-to-1 in every school. And so one of the things that we have found from this is that in our RAISE schools, there are many more devices that have been requested and that have been needed. And so we are certainly working with our equity department, innovation and adolescent learning and program and learning, as well as learning support services, to look at a revised model that better meets the needs of our most vulnerable students in our communities. We recognize that, and that is something that will be adjusted moving forward.
Trustee Bell?
Thank you.
Is that everything?
Yes, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Ellis, I have you next.
Thank you. You mentioned in the report that the money for the purchase of these are within, you can handle that within your department's budget. I'm assuming that this is through found efficiencies within your budget. I'm just wondering if you can sort of outline, it was because of the COVID and there are less needs, you save some money, or I'm just wondering where that money came from, and if there have been any other initiatives that sort of been put on hold to free the money up.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Trustee Ellis. The funds came through money that was allocated for our Wi-Fi project. So that project with COVID-19 needed to be put on hold and will be delayed until subsequent years. So the money came from the money that was initially allocated to upgrade our Wi-Fi over this year and next year.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So we're in essence, we're being asked to reallocate targeted money, and that in future budgets, there'll be a line item so that we can continue that Wi-Fi project. I just want to be clear on what we're authorizing here.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I'm not sure if CFO Carson is on the line. It might be better suited to respond to that question.
CFO Carson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Each year, BNLT does submit, and as part of our overall budget, we prepare a capital budget for the department. And each year there are, much like our facilities renewal that you see, there are funds that are specifically allocated, some that are unallocated. We have, in developing the 2021 recommended budget, made sure that there would be dollars available to continue the Wi-Fi project and to support the ongoing cyclical acquisition of Chromebooks. So I guess the brief answer is yes, there will be dollars available. The only other comment I'll make is we did, in developing our forecast, assume that this purchase would be made during the 2019-2020 period.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
And I remind people, please put your hands down when you've finished speaking, and we do not have a motion on the floor yet. Trustee Penny, I have you next. Oh, sorry, Trustee Evans. Trustee Lyra before Trustee Penny.
I guess I'll move the motion. I just had a question to staff. What is our end of life plan for this technology? Is it going to create a giant spike in 5 years when all of this technology is now hit its end of life cycle?
So through you, Chair, thank you, Trustee Lyra, for the question. We have a 5-year technology acquisition plan. So every year we allocate funding in business and learning technologies and to purchase new technology, including Chromebooks and mobile devices. So over the course of each year, we do replenish devices and then take devices that are no longer receiving updates that are out of service over a period over each year, so that we don't get into a situation where on that 5th year or that 6th year that there is an extensive amount of budget that would be required.
Okay, and I don't think I need to open.
And so Trustee Lyra has moved the recommendation, but we do still need a seconder.
I will second.
Trustee Penny, thank you for that. And did you have any further questions or introduction, Trustee Lyra?
No.
I'll move on then to Trustee Penny, who was next on my list.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'm just wondering anyone that shopped around for certain types of technology lately would know that some of it is pretty hard to get because of the explosion in learning and in other remote businesses. And I'm just wondering if we feel that we could have all these Chromebooks, all the new ones that we're proposing, procured and deployed by early in the school year, especially given the Ontario's procurement guidelines, or is this one of the, are we doing this under sort of the emergency provisions as well?
So through you, Chair, thank you, Trustee Penny, for the question. We do have a standing suppliers through OECM, and so we have Manager Owens has been working with her colleagues in the province and folks within the province who have been seeking out and asking boards what they feel that their needs are going to be over the coming school year. And we are confident that we will have the 5,000 devices with us by the end of July.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm just wondering as well, under the 3 modes of operation the province has asked us prepare for, A, B, and C. The most concerning one obviously would be the continued full remote learning. And I'm just wondering if the purchase of 5,000 Chromebooks at this point is going to be enough for us to fulfill option C, or do you think that we may have to come back a little bit later on, or is it too early to tell?
So through you, Chair, thank you, Trustee Penny, for the question. Based on the information that we have currently with 11,000 devices being out in the system, we would anticipate that we would have enough devices if option C is the option that we go with when we return to school in September. We also do anticipate that if we are in option C in September, that we would see a spike in the number of families that would be seeking and looking for those devices. With an additional 5,000 Chromebooks at this point, that gets us to just over 28,000 Chromebooks, and I think that we would feel, fairly comfortable that we would have enough in option C if this would happen. If option C would happen, excuse me, based on where we are today, and certainly that is our best estimate in conversations with folks within the department and in schools.
Okay, so your 28,000 is the 23,500 plus the additional 5,000 new, right?
Correct, Trustee Penny.
Yeah, but you said if September 2019, 5,000, we're no longer seeing updates, and we're going to be cycled out, I guess, coming year, right?
So those 5,000 devices, we feel that we can maintain them for the first part of the school year, and so those will remain in our mix and in the numbers at this point in time. The hope would be, fairly early in the school year, if not within the new year, that we would see a sort of a return to a more normalized state within our school system, and then we could begin to make adjustments at that point.
And I believe CFO Carson has something to add.
Just briefly, Madam Chair, it will be our intention that the 2021 budget does include a provision, as it always does, for the acquisition of additional Chromebooks. We're still looking at that in terms of what our overall financial situation will be. And so those will be in a position subsequent to the approval of the budget to perhaps move ahead with that earlier in the year than we would normally. So that's also available should we determine the requirements are there.
So back to you, Trustee Penny. Anything further?
No, thank you very much. It's a good, very well thought out, and I have no problem supporting this. Thanks.
And I have no other speakers on my list on this motion, so I will go back to Trustee Lyra for wrap up, please.
None required.
And if there's no wrap up, then I will ask Ms. Guthrie to call the question on the motion that the board authorize the expenditure of $2,260,000 for 5,000 student Chromebooks. All those in favor?
Trustee Boothby,
In favor.
Trustee Blackburn,
In favor? In favor?
Trustee Huff,
In favor.
we have your vote. Trustee Campbell,
In favor.
Trustee Ellis,
In favor.
Trustee Jenkins,
In favor.
Trustee Penny,
In favor.
Trustee Lyra, Trustee Bell,
In favor.
Trustee Fisher,
In favor. Sorry, I'm trying to find the unmute button.
Trustee Schwartz,
In favor.
and Trustee Scott.
In favor. And do we have Trustee Lyra? Yes, she has ticked a check mark for yes, which I can see in the participants list. So she also appears to be in favor. And I believe that was unanimous in favor of the motion, so I will not call for those opposed. Moving on then to the next item on our agenda, and that is Report 20-057, Provisions for Calling Extraordinary Board Meetings. And I turn again to the director.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. We do have this report brought forward for this. It's an action item for trustees, and Executive Officer Giroux is here with us to assist us in this discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board bylaws provide that the board does not have regularly scheduled meetings in the summer. The bylaws do have provisions for special meetings, but they also have provisions for extraordinary meetings. And it has been our practice in years where there are particular issues to pass a motion allowing the board to exercise the extraordinary meeting provision. In this particular case, we're recommending that you use section 8.6 of the bylaws with regard to the calling of extraordinary meetings in the event that there are decisions related to COVID-19. And our recommendation is that that provision be in place until the 31st of December. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. The board has a similar provision in place right now. And I believe it expires at the end of this month. So.
Thank you very much, Ms. Giroux. And I would add that if we do this, we would still make every effort to either have a regular board meeting or a special board meeting with 48 hours notice rather than the shorter notice that is permitted under the extraordinary board meetings provision. I don't have any speakers on my list, but if we're going to do this, we need at the very least someone to move it and someone to second it. And I see Trustee Boothby's hand is up. Trustee Boothby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 2 of the report, and no further introduction needed.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Trustee Lyra?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it? And I don't seem to have any other speakers to this item. Trustee Boothby, did you have any wrap up?
None needed. Thank you.
Very much. And again, this will be a recorded vote, and I will ask Manager Guthrie to call the roll.
Trustee Boothby,
In favor.
Trustee Blackburn, Trustee Huff,
In favor.
Trustee Campbell,
In favor.
Trustee Ellis,
In favor.
Trustee Jenkins,
In favor.
Trustee Penny,
In favor.
Trustee Lyra,
In favor?
Trustee Bell,
In favor.
Trustee Fisher,
In favor.
Trustee Schwartz,
In favor.
Trustee Blackburn,
In favor.
and Trustee
Can you-
Scott.
In favor. And I believe that is a unanimous vote in favor, so I will not call for those opposed. And we can move on then to our item of business, which is minor report 20-048, minor revisions to policy P137.SCO, concussion management. Madam Director.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So this report is brought forward to trustees for approval on the update to policy that is helping to bring our policy into line with the PPM, the revisions to the PPM that were made last year. Trustees will have in their package the policy document as well as the updated PPM along with the letter of transmittal. And our Associate Director Reynolds is going to take us through that and respond to questions as they arise. Associate Director.
Great, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, on behalf of Superintendent Tawaj, who led this work but wasn't able to be here this evening. So it is indeed a minor revision. In January 28th of this year, you passed revisions to the policy, as the director said, which brought it into compliance with the new PPM 158, which emerged out of Rowan's Law. We then got to work on the accompanying procedure. During that time, we received a follow-up opinion, both from our own in-house legal as well as OFIA, that we were in a better position to include the code of conduct requirement into the policy and not just simply embed it in the procedure, which was our intention. So that is the revision that's before you, that the code of conduct be a policy requirement in addition to in the procedure. Essentially, there are three codes of conduct. They are modeled after the OFIA model. Staff, supervisor, staff or volunteer supervisor of an activity, a parent and a student. And essentially, it's an annual pledge that would be done through an electronic form, an online form, to adhere to the principles embodied in the in Rowan's Law and the PPM. Essentially, that they take concussion seriously. They disclose incidents when they occur. They disclose previous health and safety concerns, so that all of our student athletes will be able to participate as safely as possible. And if there are any questions, I will do my best to answer them on behalf of Superintendent Tawaj.
Thank you, Associate Director. Do we have any speakers on this issue? There is a recommendation here, and we do need it moved and seconded if we're going to make a decision on it. And I see that we have Trustee Ellis with his hand up. So Trustee Ellis.
Yes, thank you. I'll move the, well, first let me ask a question. On on folio 64, that's clause implementation 4.12. I'm looking at that. That's the only change that I've seen. Is that correct? I have a question about the text of it, where the last part of that before listing the people who have to respond, the from isn't crossed out. Is that correct? It reads a little funny to me with it there, but.
You got me on that one, whether or not the from is required. Not to put Executive Officer Giroux on the spot. I don't know if you'd had a chance to read it, if it makes more sense to not cross out the from. I'm working both from communicating and reading off of the same device and from my front step and struggling.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the trustee is correct. The way the sentence reads is every year prior to participation in inter-school board-sponsored sports, confirmation of the review of one Ministry of Education approved concussion awareness resources and the respective concussion code of conduct will be submitted to the district from the following individuals. The extra from is after that. It can be deleted, and then it's just the list of
Okay.
individuals.
I'll move the motion with the amendment of striking out the from that clause. Is that understood?
That is understood.
Thank you.
The superfluous from is not in what is on the floor before us. And do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Lyra, are you seconding? Or Trustee Lyra, I don't have you on your hand isn't up anymore. Sorry?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you very much. So is there any further introduction, Trustee Ellis?
Just that it's one change, and this is to bring it into alignment with what the province expects us. So I'm hope my fellow trustees will support this amendment, or this yes, the amendment to the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now, Trustee Lyra, did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I was going to.
Thank you. And I had Trustee Schwartz. I caught your hand a moment ago. Did you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, I had my hand up to second, but it's fine.
So I don't have any other speakers on the recommendation. So is there any wrap up, Trustee Ellis?
None necessary.
And again, we're into a recorded vote, and I will ask Manager Guthrie to call the roll.
Trustee Boothby,
In favor.
Trustee Blackburn, Trustee Huff,
In favor.
Trustee Campbell,
Whoops, in favor.
Trustee Ellis,
In favor.
Trustee Jennings,
In favor.
Trustee Penny,
In favor.
Trustee Lyra,
Favor.
Trustee Bell,
In favor.
Trustee Fisher,
In favor.
Trustee Schwartz,
In favor.
Trustee Blackburn, Trustee Scott,
In favor.
Trustee Blackburn,
In favor.
Thank you.
thank you.
And I believe that is again a unanimous vote with everyone in favor. I will not call for those opposed, and the motion is carried.
Madam Chair.
And I would, sorry, who's speaking?
It's Executive Officer Drew. I just wanted to point out that Rowan, the whole purpose of this is because of Rowan's Law Day and the legislation, and Rowan, of course, was a student in the district. And just to acknowledge that the last Wednesday in September is Rowan's Law Day, and that will be September the 30th, 2020, and that as a district, we will be recognizing that day and sending messaging to schools.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Giroux. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda, which is a notice of motion regarding an OPSBA policy resolution. I would like to turn the chair over to Vice Chair Penny.
Thank you very much, Chair Scott. And I'm going to send it right back to you to introduce your motion.
Thank you very much. As you all know, OPSBA annually calls on its member boards to offer policy resolutions, which the association may adopt for action during the coming year. And our board has typically been one of the boards submitting policy resolutions. With the postponement of the annual general meeting this year until the fall, the deadline for submitting policy resolutions has been extended. This particular motion arose from work that I was doing with student trustee Gannabout Gagne and Superintendent Hardy with regards to presenting a paper on the student trustee situation in Ontario at a capsule conference, which was also canceled. And I also had the opportunity to discuss this with a number of members of the executive committee of the Ontario Student Trustees Association and with our student trustees before bringing this forward. So I would like to move the recommendation on the floor that we send this this policy resolution, that OPSBA support and advocate for the recognition of annual fees for membership in the Ontario Student Trustees Association in the determination of funding for school district governance in the provincial grants for students' needs.
Thank you very much, Chair Scott. And just a note, the full wording of the motion and the policy resolution is located on item 2.5 of your e-scribe for those of you who may wish to find it. And I'd like to call for a second to Chair Scott's policy resolution. And Trustee Boothby is seconding that. That's good. And Trustee Scott, was that also your introduction?
That was my introduction. Thank you.
I assumed it was. And are there any questions? Trustee Boothby, did you have a question or comment?
No questions, Chair, but I do have a couple of comments. I know that this concern has been raised around the OPSBA table a couple of times because not all of the boards can afford to have their trustees go to